Well, for starters, it just feels strange.
There is a new craze taking over base layers.
That in and of itself sounds strange. I mean, it's base layers. How can it have a craze?
But people claim that mesh base layers are lighter, warmer, and keep you drier than regular base layers, with some sources claiming mesh is 4 to 6 times warmer than a closed weave garment of the same weight. And I have to admit, I was skeptical, so I picked up a mesh shirt, ran some home tests, and took it out into the winter of Colorado to find out.
Is mesh really as good as they claim?
This video is sponsored by Garage Grown Gear. Cold weather layering revolves around two main factors, moisture and air. For any type of insulation to work, whether it's a standard base layer, a fleece, or a puffy jacket, it has to trap air. All insulation technology relies on small air pockets that get trapped in its fibers and prevent warmth from moving between those pockets. The more air you can trap, the warmer you're going to feel.
But a problem happens when, instead of air, these pockets fill up with sweat, like when you're hiking up a steep incline.
Moisture moves heat much more efficiently than air and will accelerate the speed that warmth is escaping your body. If warmth escapes too fast, your body loses its ability to maintain its temperature and serious complications can occur.
When moisture starts to build up from sweat, instead of trapping air, you need air to move freely, because without air movement, sweat can't evaporate and your body can't stay warm.
And that is the biggest problem with cold weather activities. Layers are usually really good at trapping air or really good at letting it escape, and generally speaking can't do both, which is why some people think mesh is the perfect cold weather alternative.
And at first it seems ludicrous. How can a base layer with a bunch of holes in it keep you warm?
Well, mesh, when combined with an outer layer like a fleece or a hard shell, will trap large air pockets in between the woven fibers. But as soon as you start to sweat and need to release that trapped air quickly, all you need to do is open your jacket, and the same holes that were trapping air are now letting it escape, taking moisture with it.
From a scientific standpoint, it all sounds pretty simple. The question is, does it actually work?
To find out, I took a standard base layer and a mesh base layer on the exact same height.
My plan is to hike in a couple miles wearing the mesh base layer, weigh it both before and after to see just how much sweat it has retained. I'll then hike the exact same hike wearing a closed weave base layer, weigh it both before and after to see if it holds more sweat than the mesh.
But before we get into that, I wanted to see if the claims of 4 to 6 times warmer are actually true. So I set up a little test using my homemade thermal mannequin. All this is a mannequin I bought off of Amazon, a heating pad connected to a thermostat running through a power meter. I place the whole thing into a freezer and see how much energy it takes to maintain a specific temperature. Now the claim is that a mesh base layer is 4 to 6 times warmer than a closed weave garment of similar weight. I didn't have anything that was the exact same weight, but I got close. Both of these are made out of polyester. This one weighs 7.5 ounces, whereas this one is only 6.7, so a little bit less than an ounce difference. Theoretically, that should give the closed weave garment a slight advantage, but if the claims are true, it shouldn't matter. So I ran each layer through the freezer for an hour at a time, repeating multiple times to get more accurate results. Each time, I would let the mannequin come back up to room temperature before running it again. So more energy equals a colder garment, whereas less energy used equals a warmer garment. Even though the mesh base layers have been used in Norway for centuries, it still feels like a cutting edge piece of gear, which is one of the main things I look to make a video about. Which is why I'm glad to have Garage Grown Gear as a sponsor of this channel. Very rarely will big name brands come out with anything that is truly cutting edge. It's just too risky. Instead, they make small tweaks to what they know will sell. But small brands survive by pushing the boundaries of what is possible, which is one of the reasons why Garage Grown Gear carries so many small brands. They want to provide the very best in backpacking and ultralight gear. If you haven't checked them out yet, you really should. And you can go check them out at garagegrowngear.com or through the links in the description. Now for the results. I gotta admit, this is pretty impressive. This thing is warmer than a solid weave garment. How much warmer?
I'll run the numbers, then I'll let you know.
In my lab test, the mesh base layer used on average 20% less energy to maintain the same temperature. That means the mesh is about 20% warmer than a closed weave fabric, which isn't as much as Brynja's 4 to 6 times warmer claim, but still pretty impressive in my mind. A garment filled with holes is actually warmer than a solid one. Even knowing the science, I didn't expect that. But what about breathability? Well, after hiking the exact same hike once with each of the base layers, working up a good sweat both times, and venting as needed, the standard base layer visibly retained sweat around my stomach and chest and measured a little less than an ounce of sweat in the garment, which isn't a lot and probably would have dried out pretty quickly had I allowed it the time. But the mesh base layer weighed exactly the same both at the bottom and the top of the mountain after working up a sweat, which means it retained no sweat at all and breathed exactly the way that you would expect a layer full of holes to breathe.
Which really surprised me. Based on my testing, mesh base layers are lighter, warmer, and drier than a closed weave garment. But of course, none of this matters if you don't use proper layering techniques, which I talk all about in this video right here. I hope you found this video useful. Please like, subscribe, and do all those other things. And as always, thanks for watching. And that is how you get a brand new camera.